First up is Jitendra Sindhwani, President and Head Aviation Business IBS Software. He is the global head for the aviation sector for IBS, which is a leading software firm offering transformational SaaS products for travel, transportation, and logistics industries. He is responsible for complete P&L, which includes product strategy and engineering, sales, and deployment. Earlier, he was at Infosys as vice president and America's head, where he headed the managed communications, entertainment, and media practice of Infosys for the Americas region. His responsibilities included industry, strategy, sales, account management, service delivery, and client satisfaction. Meet Jitendra Sindhwani.
Jitendra, welcome to this special limited series on the Sales Experts channel, our show, Extraordinary Outcomes. We are talking about this elephant in the room, which is the abysmally low rate of conversion in B2B sales. I'm so happy to have you here.
Same here, Subhanjan. Thanks for inviting me.
Before we go into the show, tell our viewers a bit about the work you have been doing. I mean, you have a stellar background. I think one should know why you are here in this show and how much value you bring to this discussion.
Well, let me put it this way that I have been in the market for a pretty long time, selling as well as engaging with the market in different roles that I've played over the years. But one of the key components of that role has been all about sales, right? Because in the end, all of us end up doing selling in various roles that we play. But I have managed global sales in the past. I have ran businesses, and now I'm again running global sales for a company called IBS Software, where we sell products and platforms. These are complete SaaS platforms, and we take it to the travel sector, to the airlines, hospitality, travel and cruise, and related segments. So my whole career has been, big part of my career, rather, let me put it that way, in last 15 to 20 years has been in various roles that I played in the market. So have sold to different kind of segments across the globe, I would say practically. In fact, I don't think I would have not touched any continent except maybe Antarctica, where there is no businesses happening so far, and thankfully so. But pretty much have sold to almost all the continents in the world now. So that's given me a lot of global expertise as well as exposure to how these markets really operate. So happy to share some of those thoughts with your viewers and you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's dive right in. If depending upon what data you are looking at, it's told that B2B conversion rate today varies between 1.8% to a single digit still percentage, depending on the geography and the vertical you are looking at. Of course, there are outliers. There are specific companies which are outliers, but this is the industry standard. And by any stretch, if you step back and look at that number, you will say it's a horrible number, right?
Absolutely.
Yet as industry and as sales leaders, we do not talk about it. We accept it, and our response is more like, oh, we are not getting enough meetings, so let's make more calls. That's our response, right? My question to you is very simple, Jitendra. What got us here?
I think a very traditional approach of segmenting the market. That's one very clear answer to that. What you do is you believe you have a product that can, for example, go to 1,000 companies, right? That you can take it to. What you do is, irrespective of where these segments are, you basically start hitting that segment, right? And you take a very traditional approach of hitting the market and hoping something will stick. That hope that something will stick creates the challenge for you, because that means neither did you create a proper brand, nor did you create a proper pull, nor did you properly segment the market, or not there is a sales cycle involved, right, in everything that you do. You just can't expect that here is my 1,000 companies, I'm going to just target, hit them, and hope that the miracle will happen. That traditionally is what got you here, where the data is always 2%. In fact, it's interesting. When I started setting up the global sales and marketing team here at IBS again, and when I started hiring people, that's what the number they threw at me. They said 2%. I said, you know what? I really don't understand what this 2% means, because to me, that seems a very strange number to begin our whole strategy and our whole operations on. So yes, But essentially, it's a traditional way of just taking the whole market, hitting it hard, and hoping something will stick. And that something became usually in the range of 2%, I would say. So that's really what got us here.
So what is it that we are doing wrong? I mean, obviously we are doing many things wrong. I mean, we are approaching this segmentation. Is it because we do not want to do the work, or it's too complex? I mean, we have plethora of data available today. I mean, there's no dearth
True,
of
true,
data, right?
true, true. So remember, in the past, the technology was not there for you to do that so diligently. Let's just put it that way. For example, you give Google ads. Now you can really create more personalization around it, right? Now you know which segments you can target, who's reading your advertisement, who's reading your content, for example, right? Or how do you connect with the right individual in any organization? Through LinkedIn, through various other forums and channels that are available to you now, there is an ability for you to reach that market. That was not available to you a few years ago. So if you look at this, data is based on all the things that have happened in the past, where all these technology-driven channels, rather, I would say, were not available to you. The reliance was a lot on your sales team. So your marketing will go and do all kind of marketing, related, activities, and they will generate some kind of leads from there,
Right.
which will be handed over to sales. But the disconnect between sales and marketing was always there, right? Marketing basically just went and started doing what they thought they could do rather than aligning first with sales. And then the data that sales got was really not aligning fully with the segment or the target that they were going after. So that was part number one. Part number two was also the reason that happened was also that there were not many tools available for marketing to know that, hey, you know what, I need to go after these 1,000 companies. Did I connect with the right individuals there? Did I reach out to the right buyers there? Did I reach out? Did my content receive very well to them? Did they actually read my emails? Did they actually read my content? Plenty of things that you can do today were not available to you in the past. So I wouldn't really call that the mistakes we made. I think as the technology is evolving, our ability to reach the end right buyer has significantly improved now. That is, like, today we have tools available where I know that in every organization, the number of buyers are limited. So if you have 1,000 companies, you can pretty much say that in every organization, you will have 2 to 3 key people, right? These could be the actual buyer whose business is getting impacted through your products or service, or you could have a procurement department, right? Or you can, if you're selling a technology product, then you can have a CIO's organization, right? So you practically know that there are 3, 4 people that come together to make a decision. Today, you can have the tools available, the channels available to reach out to those exact people. That was not there in the past. So I wouldn't call it a mistake. I think it was a very traditional marketing available in the past to reach out to that segment. And as the leads also that came out of that were really not true leads. They're basically a bunch of names and bunch of referrals or bunch of, data point with which you could start your sales activity. You didn't know the relevance. You did not know the timing of it. So you just got this, say, 1,000 names, and now you started reaching out to those 1,000 names in a hope that they will need it. So I think that those are the things that have to fundamentally change for most of the organizations. And I can talk about how that can change, but
Sure.
I hope that answers what you're
Yeah, it
looking at,
does. It
right?
does. However, my question, just a follow up to what you just said, Jitendra, is that although getting this information or availability of this information is new and but it has been there for the last few years. It's not today,
That's correct.
right?
That's correct.
And the fact is, unfortunately, that
Hmm.
you don't see any impact on the conversion rate of this data.
Right.
I mean, as I
Right.
said, there can be still be silos, there can be some spaces, some specific
Yes.
examples, and so on. But if you look at the industry, it is sort of
Yes.
like we are drowning with that data, and
Correct.
lot of the data we are generating is also sort of what, in the lack of a better word, could be called vanity data, and they really are
Right.
not pointing you to the right buyer and so on. So
Right.
what is the disconnect that is happening today? I mean, theoretically, what you're saying is right, that we should be able to do better conversion today, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt in that. Yeah. I think the biggest change is the mindset. and the way you do things, right? Because that has to fundamentally go change. It's like, you're running a train which is moving at a certain speed. Now you suddenly want to get off the track and move to a new track with a new engine
Right.
and with a new bogies also at
Right,
times, right?
right.
I think that change, not everybody's comfortable with. See, because here's the situation. If your 2% conversion is helping you meet your goals, right? You don't want to take a risk of changing that,
Fair
right?
point.
So the mindset and the risk of change is a real barrier for you. And hence what people do is people look at incremental approaches. But the problem with that incremental approach is that unless you create a real step function of saying, you know what, I'm going to throw out my old processes, this is how we're going to work. And you really take a step back and actually figure out the direction that you want to go in and set new benchmarks for what you're going to achieve, you will never change. And then there's have to be certain changes. It's agents who have to do that. Like if I as a leader do not carry that change and really change my own behavior, the team will not change. So I think fundamentally I've seen this is the resistance to change, because if you are an organization that has been doing things for a long time, it's very difficult for you to change. And every tool gives you an incremental benefit. Your 2% will now become 2.5%, right? But you know what? That fundamentally did not change the way you were expecting it to change, really. But you're happy with that 2.5% because it's a 25% jump on your earlier.
Right. So this is the interesting thing. In fact, today, just before this, I was doing another recording for the same show, and what came about is that as salespeople, we are advocating change for our customers. That you need to change, you need to shift to this software, you need to do this, you need to do that, and
Right.
looks like we are extremely resistant to change ourselves,
Oh,
which is sort of a
absolutely.
paradox that we are
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. See, remember now also as your customer is getting a lot more engaged. See, earlier the customer also did not know much about you. Like the information channels were limited. Now there is so much information available for every product, every services, every company in the market, that the buyer is very demanding. What essentially that means is that it is not just the job of the salesperson to connect. The whole organization has to be market oriented now. See, if I'm selling a software product, okay, now there's so much, salesperson will only know so much about that product because he is a sales guy, right? The real knowledge actually sits with people who actually built that product, the product owner, for example, right? How much does that person get engaged in educating the market has a huge role to play. Now, in the past, some of those guys have done it as their own motivation, right? Unless you bring them as part of the sales process or the market process, it doesn't change the mindset, right? Which means that you have to know that how much time of this person you're going to engage in the market, what is the output that you're expecting, and what are the channels you're going to use to engage this person also. So I think today you have to take a lot more comprehensive view of who are the people who are going to be active in the market from your side. Because educating the market, preparing the market, creating that pull, building that brand is going to do much more benefit to you than just going and hitting that market with your content, in a very, very static manner.
True.
But for that to know, you need to have a better segmentation of the market. You need to understand your buyers better. So the way I divide this is into three parts. One, you really need to understand your market. Spend a lot more time and energy in saying that, okay, of the 1,000 companies that you're going after, really, my available segment. See, there is a difference between target segment and what you can address in next, 2 years or 3 years. That can be a very small pie of that, for example. So you need to know that of the 1,000 companies, for example, I'm going to go after these 300 because they are my potential buyer in next 3 years because of replacement cycles or the needs that particular segment will have, or the region that I'm going to go after, right? Etc. etc. You can create various dimensions along which you can filter the data. Once you do that, then you need to understand who are your buyers there, and that information is again available. You can really figure out the names of the people that are going to be your potential buyers, right? So that tells you exactly the people that you need to reach out to. So I think this this understanding the market, analysis of the market is really step number one. Step number two, how are you going to engage these people? And not these organizations, these individuals. What channels would you use? Because you can have a very static channel of they seeing your ad on Google, on various sites that they would visit, for example, or they can see your ads in some magazines also, the publications. People still read, some of them still read those. Or various engaged channels, like we run something called as content syndication programs. What that content syndication programs are, that we really use certain organizations, and there are organizations in the world who make sure that your content reaches the right person. So if I've written a white paper, how do I ensure that that white paper actually reaches the right individual? Very important piece of the puzzle, because you're really educating the actual potential buyer, right? So you come up with a channel strategy of how you're going to take this content to the segment. So that second piece has really the content that you're going to take and how you're going to take it. That's the thing. Third, with the sales, you align it that we are going to go after this segment. So the initial research that you did, you came up with those 300 organizations, for example, right? That has to be owned by the sales team already. It shouldn't happen that, oh, they discover, oh, really, there is a company that is interested in my product and I did not even know that. Those exceptions should be very limited. So if you start with that, and these three organizations or these three parts of the processes work in tandem with the proper thought, with the proper analysis, and you feed, you have a feed, you basically look backward once you generate the data. I think then things start to fall in place. But that requires a fundamental shift of how organizations are going to look at their sales and marketing as a process completely. That fundamentally.
Yeah, I think this is great. So I think before we move on to the solution part of the discussion, which I think you sort of prepped the ground for, I have
Right.
one question. I mean, rather, I want you to comment on this when you said that a lot of people are happy with the 2% conversion because it's taking them to their goal, right?
Right.
Uh, are they not thinking of the enormous, you know, enormous waste of resource that is going behind those 98% that they're not converting?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. While you're meeting your goals, your question is very valid. While you're meeting your goals, the effort or the cost associated with this may not be appropriate at all, may not be aligned with what you would think, right? It's like, what you're doing probably with 1,000 sales resources or 500 sales resources, for example, just taking one parameter of that. Maybe you can do that with half of that now.
Right.
If you're a lot more focused, right? Because your target setting and everything else can significantly change, and the way you train your teams can also change, right? So you're absolutely right. There is an element of that. So you still be meeting your goals, but your sales and marketing costs could be humongous, actually. In fact, if you pick a lot of organizations, you will actually see that that their sales and marketing cost really stands out. And at times I look at their P&L and I'm like, wow, why would you really want to do that? Because something is not right about that data. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, leaders spending 60% of their revenue on sales and marketing. I mean, you know those.
Yes,
Right?
you would see those. You would see that. You would see a lot of organizations having that. In fact, their bottom line is negative because of the money that they end up spending on sales and marketing.
Right.
Their gross margins could still be very healthy,
Right.
but their operating margins are not fully aligned. Absolutely, that's true.
Right. So let's move on, Jitendra. What do you think? I mean, I think the the clues are already there in the discussion that we've had already. But if you want to sort of summarize and say and sort of come up with a list of things that you think should be done, what is it that we can do to fix this scenario?
Yeah. So I think I'll give you a very good example of our own organization, IBS Software. So we had sort of a sales model available. We were following some processes, etc. And nothing wrong with that. We were successful with that. So when I took over sales, so this is kind of my, as I spoke earlier, this is my sort of second role in this organization, and I was leading one of the SBUs in the past, but then we changed our structure, and then I ended up heading sales across all of our products globally. It gave me an opportunity to take a very fresh look at it. I really took a step back and said, you know what? let's look at what are we doing, what are our challenges, what are our goals, and is there a better way of doing things? So I literally took a few days to wipe the slate clean. It's like, let's just not look at what we have. Let's look at, if I were to build an organization from beginning, what will it look like? Okay. So that helped me dissociate myself and take a fresh look at things. Maybe because I was walking into that role with a fresh mindset and not carrying any of the baggages of the past. I just took a very fresh sort of an approach that, hey, this is my ultimate goal of the total contract value that we need to achieve. And hence, for me to do that, is there a better way of doing things? And then what is the kind of organization I would need, which both from sales side, marketing side, pre-sales side, and any other support that's needed. So, I think step number one, and I did work with an external consultant also to get some insights into this. That also helped me as setting this whole new processes or new organization in place. So I think that. So while we have been around for more than 20 years, 3 years ago, I took the decision that let's wipe the slate clean and now let's start fresh. Okay. Which meant that we had to rewrite some of these processes. Okay. We had to retrain our teams. We had to reorient our teams. The org structure completely changed. The goals completely changed, because goals was not just about one end number. We had some interim goals also, right? That unless you have a very well qualified pipeline, you cannot meet your target. And hence, what does a well-qualified pipeline means for you? So the idea was, we took a step back to reset the processes, reset some of these numbers, as well as create a new org structure, right? And again, for every business, that structure could look very different depending on what you're selling, to who you're selling, and the markets you operate in, right? So there is no cookie cutter approach there. You have to really take a call on what's going to work best for you. So that is I think that is step number one that every organization do if you want a step function. Of course, if you want just an incremental function, then you know what? You add another marketing channels and your data will improve. But that is not what I'm recommending, right? At some point in time, you need to take a really hard look at where you have reached in your in your business maturity curve and where you want to go from here, right? I think that's step number one that I would recommend to every organization do, because I really did that. I started that journey 3 years ago, and I can really see how much difference it has made in 3 years' time,
Right.
So that's step number one, as I said. Then step number two is how you are using your data, right? To learn from it. Today we implemented Salesforce, and again, I'm not either endorsing or anybody. There are a lot of good platforms available for our needs. We picked up Salesforce, and we realized that the amount of data it has been given us has helped us a lot. Now, because we have better understanding of various stages of our sales cycle and how those works, like conversion, as you talked about, right? We can go back and see what worked and what did not work. We're generating enough data to do that, right? So I think looking at the data and learning from them, that is a good part of the exercise as well.
Right.
And then, as I said, I already talked about the three things that we did as an organization, right? Understanding the market better. You keep researching the market. That process never stops, really. And then how you reach the market and how you do the sales and marketing alignment. I think if those three buckets you do proper justice to, this number can significantly change. But one caveat, you may now have less number of leads, but more relevant leads.
Right.
Because the idea is not that I generate thousands and thousands of leads and then have a 2% conversion.
Right.
I would be very happy that if I create fraction of those leads and my conversion is a lot better, because that helps me with my cost and effort also, remember.
Absolutely. Just before I let you go, would you like to elaborate a bit on the sales and marketing alignment bit? Because that's also a contributor
Oh, yes.
towards this conversion issue, right? So that's where those quote unquote junk leads are getting, or non-leads are getting generated,
Absolutely.
and so on. So
Absolutely.
how do you go about fixing the sales and marketing alignment problem?
Yeah. In the B2B world, actually, it's very easy to do that,
Right.
and I find it surprising that this misalignment keeps happening.
Absolutely.
I think it's actually more of a mindset and a culture than the reality. Because see, as I said, when you were researching the market as a first step, right, or as a continuous step, I would say, once you're in the game, you know the segment that you're going to go after. That segment has to be owned by your sales team, not just your market team. So if you say that I'm going to go after these 300 companies, for example, in this particular region, those 300 companies have to be on the target account list of your sales team also. They have to own it. For example, if you take the region view, then the region head has to align that these are the 300 companies I'm also going to sell to. Because in that research, that individual or that region is going to be equally involved, right? So right at the beginning, you know that we're going to sell to these 300 enterprises in my region, right? Then you sit with marketing and say, how am I going to reach these 300 organizations? In the past, what will happen is these functions were sort of disjointed. Somebody did the research, handed over to marketing, marketing created the leads, handed over to sales.
Yeah.
It cannot work in that kind of a linear manner. They have to come together to do it. So unless you create forums to do that, unless you create internally, those channels to do that, that process will always be broken. So it's actually, in my mind, I get very surprised when people raise this problem to me, but maybe because I've been able to solve it, or maybe because I think it's a very obvious thing to do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, that the segment that marketing will cater to is the segment that has to be owned by sales.
Yeah.
Then automatically you would see that the results coming out from marketing are anyway feeding and helping the sales team. If that still doesn't happen, then either your marketing programs have a problem or the way you selected the segment has a problem. That's when you go back again to the research and say that really did I select the right segment? Maybe the segment that I shortlisted is not ready for my product, but there is another segment that's ready for my product, right? So that feedback loop also helps you keep redefining your segment. That's a very important part. That's why it's not a one-time exercise. It's an exercise depending on your business. You should do very, very regularly. You can do it quarterly, 6 monthly, or once a year, depending on. But once a year is absolutely needed, right? Because before you commit to the spend for next year, you have to have a very good idea of what you're going to do next year. So once a year is absolutely, I think one should do it absolutely once in a quarter. That's absolutely needed today.
Well, Jitendra, this is a great and eye-opening discussion. I think people see it is again. I think you stuck to some very core points, and that was a nice thing about this chat. People can take up one or two ideas from here and actually try and implement. I think that's great. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you.